Right now in Sudan, anarchist comrades are organizing in the middle of a war, repression, and displacement. The anarchist group in Sudan is building mutual aid, grassroots committees, and political education for survival and liberation. And they need our support. You can stand with them by making a one-time donation, holding your own fundraiser and sending the funds to the Open Collective, Support Sudanese Comrades, link in bio, or become a monthly supporter at that same Open Collective link. Every contribution strengthens their ability to keep resisting and caring for their people. Solidarity means action. Tap the link in our bio or in the show notes and support the anarchist group in Sudan today.
Our podcast is a tool for learning, and we're taking it further on Patreon. By supporting us, you'll gain access to exclusive reading episodes where we unpack key texts and ideas, plus early access to interviews with radicals and revolutionaries. Your contribution helps to make these resources more accessible and impactful. Visit patreon.com/The Dugout Pod to support our work. Revolutionary Letter number 18. Let's talk about splitting. Splitting is an art frequently called upon in revolution. Retreat, says I Ching, must not be confused with flight, and furthermore, frequently, it furthers one to have somewhere to go, i.e. know in advance the person/place you can go to, means to get there, keep money, cash, and house for traveling, an extra set of ID. Robert Williams was warned by his own TV set when the man was coming for him. He had his loot at home, his wife and kids, all across the country with him, into Canada and onto Cuba. It's a good idea to have good, working transportation, wheels. One friend has 2 weeks stashed in his VW bus, food, water, matches, clothing, blankets, gas. He can go at least that long before he hits a town, can leave at any time. Something to think about.
Hello, and welcome to the Dugout. I hope you all have been having a good week. Hope you guys have listened to the last interview we just did with Herman Gonzalez. Yeah, we're so glad to get back into the season. We are going through a lot in America, as always, and are very glad to share our experiences with y'all, have this sort of communication, community, and access point. So just have a connection and stay tapped into how we're feeling, what we're doing, and where we think we're going, and what the fuck we can do about it.
Yeah, same. I'm coming into this feeling overwhelmed, but it's fine, and we can't cover everything, of course. Yeah, how do you feel going into season 3? I guess is my main question. How do you feel? Because we've done 2 seasons, we've learned a lot. Now we're obviously in a very particular moment in history. What is the point of this podcast? I'm asking myself mainly.
The point is to make me feel better. Honestly, and it really has. I was talking to some comrades today who had reached out and thanked us for our coverage of the Iranian protests and of things like that for American audiences and what's going on in Kurdistan. Because they were like, everyone else around me is just gaslighting me. Potential allies look like they just want to throw us to die, and it is so dehumanizing. It's humiliating, and it's like, does it really need to be this hard to be seen? And just watching how the left cannibalize people's movements in other spaces, and then having them watch it happen to their own people, and still having to like navigate the fact that this is what's happening to Black and Indigenous people all the time, consistently. And it still doesn't make it hurt any less. Like, of course it doesn't. Even if you know what might happen or what's gonna happen, when it happens, you're dealing with all the different shit that comes with that. And I feel like it's harder to stay clear. And I think one thing I'm excited about with this episode is I'm coming in with a lot of clarity, I feel. And I feel like this season, this year, and these past couple months has given me some of the context I needed to better know how to situate myself into the worldwide revolution.
Good. At its best, this is an opportunity to center around really important questions and conversations. And I feel like I'm learning a lot from how much internationalism you're kind of centering. And it's pushing me to just learn what I can, where I can. Because sometimes I'm like, what is that acronym? What is that? What is that? What's going on? So, I think it's, I think the fact that we're season 3, I'm just like, wow, it's happening. And I think everything that's happening in the world is kind of, I don't want to say confirmation that so many of my or our beliefs are necessary. And we're also at a point where it's either you keep a certain stasis or you grow and adapt to what's happening on many different levels. And some of that for me has just been trying to stretch my brain, be intentional about reading more of certain things, understanding that there's a lot I am still trying to learn, but also this is it. The time is now. And I feel like one thing I've been processing lately is just how weird it is as things get more intense to realize how you talk to different people in your life about things, and how that's been something that I've been more aware of, like who is actually trying to pay attention, who is doing some of the work to learn, who's acting, and then who is kind of a non-active participant. And I don't just mean I just mean on numerous fronts. Like, I've been thinking a lot about, like, is this going to happen to us or me or people I know, or are we active participants in this process? And what does that look like? What does it feel like? Yeah, mental health wise, where are we at?
Yeah. Oh, mental health. I feel, as I do every 6 months, I try to get a new doctor, a feeling of, I don't know how do I describe this feeling, like I'm making steady progress. To me, I think it's just about trying to remain hopeful and justify that hope with facts and finding those facts, because just knowing that they're out there and being able to do just that little bit of labor helps with that. And I feel like mental health wise, it's another reason why I have to be so grateful for the fucking Dugout, because if it weren't for the connections that this podcast has made us over the past couple of years, I don't know where my mind state would be in understanding the world around us and my role in it. So I guess I'm trying to hold on to the things that I'm grateful for while really trying to shrink the points in which I feel vulnerable, and making progress on that makes me feel ready. If one could ever feel ready. It makes me feel prepared to say I'm ready. Yeah, and there was a quote that I really, really like that I saw recently. I don't remember who it's from, so RP, but it's something along the lines of readiness isn't an emotion, it's a decision. And that I just love, because like we can organize to prepare and organize for the sake of being able to be in the most advantageous position when direct confrontation happens. The actual, in times of confrontation, that's when you are ready. That's when you have to face the moment. And yes, and it goes back to, if you don't do politics, politics does you. How about yourself?
I love asking questions where I'm like, I don't know the answer to this. I mean, I think one thing I've been repeating in my head is like, okay, it's normal to feel overwhelmed. What are the next 3 to 5 things or steps that I can be orienting myself around that help me feel grounded? And some of that is being actively involved in certain things. Some of that is thinking of the action items related to the projects that I'm involved in, and making progress on those. Other parts of it is trying to look at my days and figure out what things I can do that make me feel more human. And more human is a lot of different things. Like sometimes that's just not doing anything productive. Sometimes it's being hyper productive. Sometimes it's like calling someone in my family and realizing, oh my God, I think I need to cry. So it's a range of things. Yeah, mainly what I've been kind of processing is feeling like we're reliving history and the sacrifices of the past are coming forward, have to come forward. And what those sacrifices will continue to mean, we decide. And I take that in a lot of different ways, but I think it's helpful to help me center on, no matter how overwhelming things feel, it helps to know that we have some versions of a blueprint. This is our responsibility, meaning like individually and collectively. So I don't know. I mean, I feel like that's been grounding and yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I'm in the process of releasing a lot of emotions and trying to examine them and see what's still left in my body and what I just feel like I have to hold for now. I feel like it's been very helpful to know that one doesn't have to face this alone.
I guess in thinking of that in mind, what are some goals or intentions or things that we want season 3 to have, or expectations or little tidbits that we can drop for people that are listening? Like, what can they expect? I mean, I know for me, I'm excited to engage more with internationalism through a lot of the things that you're especially like exposing me and other people to. I really want to dig more into the website. And then I think, of course, like last Black History Month was useful in terms of looking at a lot of 101 concepts. So just looking how we can kind of continue some of that work to animate some of these basics with our lived experience and intersectionality and kind of reach for more intersectionality. What's on your mind for season 3?
I'm excited to expose things about the Black Panther Party that have never been heard before. And by that, I mean, we're going to put a lot of like elder Black Panthers in a room together and on a call together and see what cooks, to see what shit shakes. I'm excited for this next season to be a lot more queer, a lot more femme. I'm excited about like trying to be more intentional about that this year and getting more of a broader examination. I'm also really excited about focusing on some of the international stuff because I feel like that's been a very important, for all the reasons I thought it would be important and more. I'm very, very excited to that. I'm also very excited to also this year to come out with some of the curriculum stuff because I feel like I've been reworking some of my things, especially after like really realizing like, okay, wait, like a lot of the intro to anarchism stuff and intro to Black anarchism stuff is kind of on the Black Rose Rosa Negra's website. And how much of that do I need to reinvent? And actually, and something I've loved about this podcast is that, yeah, we do 101, but this is the 202. This is the 303. This is taking things a little bit deeper than what folks are a little bit more used to, which is something I've really appreciated about this podcast. Like, I'm really into popular education and doing all of that, but we need to, like, continue conversations. And I feel that we've been able to be a big part of that for a lot of people and understanding what other anarchists are thinking about that have an analysis and feel fit in their analysis. Some of the conversations I want to build on is what does a post-capitalist society look like and what are the nuances of people trying that? So really, why didn't the Soviet project work? What's going on in the Venezuelan communes? What's going on in Uruguay? How impactful was anarchist in the labor struggle compared to the labor struggle now? And just things like that I feel like are small intrigues of mine through reading history, especially when anarchists were some of the like prime modes of socialist thought and action and organization, and thinking about being a part of the collectives that are bringing that history back and making it more accessible. And I think it's also because we live in a time where that history is getting written, published, translated. That, to me, is some of the most groundbreaking, revolutionary stuff to come out, which is like the synthesis of all of our ideas and what comes from and for that. What the fuck has been going on? So I guess in this episode, we're gonna just kind of do a bit of a
Spitball. Yeah. So we ended season 3 in November, and now it's 2 months later. And I at least put out a YouTube video a few years ago. The world is on fire. What the hell are you gonna do about it? What the hell are we gonna do about it? What the hell are you gonna do about it? What the hell are you gonna do about it? So, I mean, I will say on a local level, here in Central Ohio, and like the week before Christmas, there was a really big first spike of an increased ICE presence. So locally, there's been a lot of organizing around ICE, like a lot of the longer term coalitions around ICE Watch's mutual aid support kind of coming more to the surface. People sharing resources, whistle kits. According to like the news that came out a week or two ago, that first spike of ICE being present in Central Ohio led to roughly around 280 arrests. And since then, there's been a lot of other news around ICE being in various parts of the country, Texas, Minneapolis.
Oh, and by the way, whenever ICE invades your city, they want to grab thousands. I want to know what their projected number was, because this is something the folks in Memphis, how they talk about how like, oh, this operation was a success. It was a success. Some of the states saying, but when you look at the numbers, people resisted, and there wasn't thousands of people for them to just openly grab and take and do all this because people protected each other.
Yeah. I think that's a good point of analysis. Like the images and videos and that kind of pattern recognition, like what of the state's actual intentions are being met and what are the unforeseen impacts as well. And then obviously there's all sorts of global news. I mean, I'm thinking of the U.S. military intervention in Venezuela and Maduro's capture is like a big sort of flashpoint in terms of the U.S. making more clear how it's reorienting its global politics, especially thinking in terms of the Monroe Doctrine, aka the Donroe Doctrine, and how this is becoming like justifiable cause. And then I don't know, I'm thinking of like the stuff I was hearing about Greenland and how we're trying to acquire Greenland partially because we don't think they use their military like they can't protect whatever the fuck they have, or at least that's what the U.S. is claiming.
We want control over it so that we can put those tech libertarian cities from Praxis Corporation, as well as, well, because the Praxis dude literally called Greenland the last frontier of the West, and that Denmark was not colonizing them properly enough, basically. They needed to fight against the Russian aggression and more Arctic control. And I'm like, bro, why do y'all need Arctic control? You know, Donnie and Putin over there sucking each other's rocks off. So I'm just wondering when the U.S. Federation and the Russian Federation are finally going to just link arms and join up together. I think it would be better for all of us, you know? One big destructive empire to fight. Let it be spread across itself. And we rebel. Who's the president? But yeah, Praxis was one of the libertarian cities that were aiming to build like a network city or crypto state or like little city state as like a frontier of technological innovation, AI, resource extraction, terraforming harsh environments, kind of practicing that so that they can go and fuck up space even more. And like the co-founders originally, like Dryden, Bowen, gotten lots of investments from Sam Altman and Peter Thiel to like kind of view Greenbox as a city, and Praxis is now, because they couldn't really get it in, it's in the Mediterranean, it's not in the Greenland now, because they were eyeing Greenland a couple years ago for these freedom cities, as they call them. But yes, this is something, the same thing that's like, if you've heard about Prospera in Honduras, is there's little freedom cities. And yeah, apparently he said as of like, or in last April, that they were still trying to look at Greenland. And I can't remember the exact connection, or find their exact connection, other than Doge, apparently, fellow venture capitalists that invested in the Greenland expansion to, quote, be the dawn of a new manifest destiny, are eyeing that bag. So I feel like it's a combination of multiple things. And I don't know, part of me just looks at this and I'm like, do we not see this Europe looking at us, as we call Europe not white enough, which is another thing that happened over this past 2 months, is we released an analysis of Europe and how they're growing their civilization, and we said, y'all are letting in too many immigrants, and you're denying and destroying your own civilization, so we need to put a little bit of a pause on y'all, especially when it comes to some of our health policies and things like that, which is just fucking ridiculous, because the U.S. is beneath the majority of European countries in health standards. We sit at like number 15 in the globe. But yeah, just like more aggression of the U.S. The U.S. was threatening some action in Iran, which it seems to have not pulled through on, but possibly because they had already worked out a couple of deals with Israel, and Israel was going heavy in their engagement in the protests in Iran, which I do want to talk about, especially after mentioning it in that way, because the Iran protests and the response to them from the general left and anti-imperialist sector has been fucking ridiculous. And it's one of those reasons why, like, anti-imperialism, this is something I learned recently, came out as like a coalition term for liberals and people who were just against the war, to, especially if you don't agree with, Lenin's anti-imperialism as the highest form of capitalism's like definition, came from this point of view and like was able to gather like such progressive energy around it by being like a less political anti-war version kind of thing, 'cause that has grown more and more, which is why I think I remember, we learn about imperialism in middle school in 8th grade, but do they tell you that the U.S. is an imperial country? No, because we're fighting Russian imperialism and these things that are going on. When bringing that back to the conversation in Iran is that we still need a decolonial attitude in a lot of these spaces, and a more democratic and pluralist attitude in these spaces. Because one thing I think that we've seen a lot of is like this campism, which we started seeing lots of hints of in like the Palestine solidarity work, and with people being like, okay, well, Syria and Iran are allowing Palestinian militia resistance groups to work through their area, therefore, ergo, they are the most liberatory thing possible. If not, then I have to at least, and this is where campism comes from, be pro their side of things. Like there's little camps around the worlds of different poles, no matter what their interests are, no matter why they want to do it, no matter how they want to do it, which to me is a very unnuanced take, and it leads to a lot of things like people putting these supposed geopolitical analysis and themes way ahead of people's movements and people's struggles for autonomy, for liberation. And I'm like, how can a country be a part of the axis of resistance when all it knows how to do is fund a little resistance here and crush a lot of resistance in their own spot? That's not an axis of resistance. That is an axis of repression. To me, this gets to the whole seeming like everyone else just has an anti-American, anti-imperialism. Yeah. We are just the bad guys. Russia, okay, maybe they do a little thing so bad. And then the invasion of Ukraine happened, and then you got to see some of the leftists that were riding dick for these authoritarian regimes because they have some post-socialist or some socialist experiments going on, absolutely disregarding the will of the people and the people who have been organizing for their own rights and being brutally killed in the streets. And it was some of the most disgusting things to see. And if you want more like actual information, I would recommend going to our Instagram and following some of the accounts that we've been reposting and collaborating with, like Decolonized Anarchism. I mean, there were freed and liberated towns in East Kurdistan and in Western Iran. These are towns and cities that have decided, like, after the women life freedom movements in 2022, they went hard, but Tehran didn't. And they took the brunt of that from the government. And this was another moment in which people were fighting against that and no nuanced conversation happened. It was only, well, if you're showing the protest, then Mossad, you're just on Mossad's side, and Mossad is in the protests. And it's like, well, of course Mossad's in the fucking protests. They've been in the protests since whenever the fuck Israel decided that their neighbor was too hostile for them and they needed to engage. That's been documented forever. Trump said if they shoot protesters or the protesters get shot, then they're going to go in and they're going to bomb them. He just admitted that he wants to bomb them really, really, really bad because if you protest in Iran, you're getting shot. It's as simple as that for a lot of the reasons.
I mean, would you say that the campism that you're seeing is like aspects of the left apologizing, or like this sort of very simplified power analysis that then also, through the things it's asserting because of its ideas about anti-imperialism, it's ignoring the power that some of these states hold and like the complexities of how they're aligned, and then also like removing this localized agency. I feel like the removing of that local agency, and for me, like being newer to it, like trying to read more of what people are sharing, and then of course I have like a skepticism of mainstream media, but then it sort of goes into like, where do you get a more clear perspective? And that's where I think the internationalism, having conversations across borders, and like really strengthening that ability to connect with people on either a more localized level or trusted sources that are able to share information on a local level. And so I guess I think about that, like when do people that identify as leftists inadvertently like become apologists for certain power dynamics because it suits the optics of their analysis or how they want to show strength? Because it is interesting how, even just learning more, it's interesting how different segments of the left will decide what's a win or not based on what seems most aligned with their worldview about liberation, as opposed to the worldview of the people that are struggling through these movements and fighting for like more political autonomy. Like I don't know, I feel like those are some of the things that I've been kind of working through.
Yeah, it's like they have a strategy, and then people hold this opinion because they think that it makes them smarter, or they have a plan, or they're more fit revolutionaries because they can plug into this strategy and this party line and this what feels like a movement line. Because to me, that goes against the very principles. Because you have to do that, you have to remove the agency of the peoples from the question at all. And to me, that makes me think that people don't understand some of the central points of the Free Palestine movement, especially here on Turtle Island, which was its solidarity with Palestine, but its solidarity with everyone. And these struggles are interconnected. And to the point that even Palestinians have been having to do the fucked up work of coming out and being like, I don't want the IRGC in Iran to be brutalizing the people in which I'm in solidarity with. Like, there is a basic understanding, especially from people who have lived under authoritarian structures and had to take the brunt of that authoritarian structure. They know that authoritarians are going to link up with each other to deny any future liberty for anyone else outside of their power structure. To me, it reminds me a little bit about like what happened, and this will go into my next part about Kurdistan, but about what happened in Syria a year ago. Assad fell. Bless God. Everyone's celebrating. Except a lot of leftists in the West. Because, well, Assad, he called himself a socialist. Assad, well, now that I think about it, he let a couple of Palestinian militias pull through in their land there. So, like, maybe he was worth the things.
I guess it makes me think about, like, the ends justify the means, and how in revolutionary processes, coups, regimes falling, it makes me think of, like, that core question where it's like, if you're of a life experience or not exposed to all of these like various intense forms of political violence, and then you look at another country, I don't know, like the ends justify the means. Because I think about like, yes, I want to be a revolutionary, yes, violence is necessary, but then it's like, where's the line in terms of what you're actually...
And I hear people say critical support, but where's the critique?
Yeah.
Like, where is this critique? Because if it was critical support, like I had critical support for Assad falling. Now we have to be in relation with things that are going on. Stay informed. There was massacres of Druze population in Sweden, in the West, in the Southwest. There's been, if you look at the type of governance system that happened in the Northwest when Jelani, or al-Shara, whichever you want to call him, who's currently in power now, was in power up in the Northwest. Like, and now going into another news that we've been looking at is that like they're going and attacking stuff in the northeast, in the Rojava, and the Democratic Autonomous Administration of Northeast Syria, Danes, as I'm just going to call it from now, which is the name of the administration in the region and the governance structures. Yeah, and just like I just wanted to say, like very briefly, that over the past 3 weeks, like the Syrian government has launched military operations into like SDF-held territories and areas in northeast Syria, and just like the SDF was the Syrian Democratic Forces, a coalition that came together to help fight off ISIS and got some U.S. support, really NATO support, and weapons and air supplies, especially fighting ISIS. And a lot of clashes has been happening. And at this point, they've pushed into key cities like Raqqa and Deir el-Zor, which have been under Dane's administration for over years now. And clashes have occurred near major prison holding ISIS detainees, and both sides reporting fighting, which there's always been a semi-weird party line of like everyone we have, not semi-weird, it's been a weird party line of people saying that all the detainees and ISIS detainees we have are ISIS brides and their families and things like that. So they need to go through the deprogramming, or they need to release them to their home countries, but home countries aren't taking them, which we've seen evidence from the US and the UK and I believe Australia, but not necessarily from everyone else. And it, I'm an abolitionist. I'm like, let's see what moves are actually getting made over there. And I know the YPJ, I believe, was using and doing some like rehabilitation tactics for women that they were able to be in community with, but it was not nowhere near where it needed to be, especially because they were in the middle of a fucking war, and was hoping that hopefully that some of that could progress be made. That to me is critical solidarity with the movement. Critical solidarity with the movement at Rojava. Because as an abolitionist, a lot of that shit makes me ick. And as an anarchist, the governance and what they're fighting for in the revolution and the fact that they're willing to defend it and build coalition makes me yay. Where and what are we able to move through, I think, is a big point. And I guess like some main points of the agreements that are happening with some things around like ceasefires and agreements between the SDF and Syrian government forces, Syrian transitional government forces, which it's just like they're trying to get the SDF to withdraw. They're trying to get the administration of oil fields, border crossings, civil institutions. They want the SDF fighters integrated individually into the army and no longer operating as an autonomous force. There were some concessions with recognition of Kurdish language rights and other cultural assurances, but they were not put in the Constitution when Jelani put that Constitution up, because,
I
was
wondering, I was like, okay, language stuff, okay, yeah, but...
Which is nice, because now they're allowed to speak their language and be citizens, which is something that is still weird. But then, when Jelani made this government, this is the Arab Syrian government.
Yeah.
He made that name change. Or,
I don't
want to get that where its official name is still the Syrian Arab Republic. I will not get into all of this, and I'm just doing a small update. That's what we're doing right now. We cannot cover everything, and we will not cover everything. But I just wanted folks to be talking about it and be looking at it, because it was always a big thing of people not knowing what's going on in Syria, and honestly, the only people who do are your average tanky, or your average PSL member. And that's because, the PSL has connections with some of these parties. And not only the PSL, I'm not just trying to single out one of your favorite, like, little commie organizations. Multiple of these organizations are in international meetings with Venezuela, with other places and other international communist parties that are trying to build this sort of international, which is why anarchists, we need to build the international as well and be able to fight for each other wherever we are.
Maybe this is just me trying to orient where this all feels important, as I think as things become more explicitly authoritarian in the U.S. It's just like, I feel like when I've done migrant caravan support work or stuff at the border, the part of it that I find interesting is like, oh, the imperial boomerang is swinging back and forth, and the struggles that we're seeing elsewhere where leftists in the West or in the U.S. are flattening these struggles for the sake of these campus takes in order to have optics. I would hope that there's enough nuance to analyze the things that are happening here. Like, basically, it's like what we need to offer to other parts of the world is going to be necessary for us to analyze and deal with the conditions of what's happening here, and how it shouldn't just be analyzed and understood through the lens of like, okay, so understanding that is going to help us. But it is, I don't know, I feel like that was a part of doing the migrant caravan support work where I'm like, oh, like in the best way, this is a humanizing process or mode of analysis that allows us to be more prepared, because regime change, resistance, fighting for sovereignty, I think in terms of like looking at the sacrifices, the brutality, all of the things that are there, how can you know what you're up against if you don't know what other people in other parts of the world are dealing with? How can you look at a region and analyze the 3 to 7 or 8 different factions of who's trying to take control, and how does that lean into a political analysis of like what people that want liberation or equality or freedom, how do you find that point of intervention? And I feel like that's where I think all of this, in my mind, I hope this year I get to learn a lot more, because it is kind of really stretching my brain, because I'm like, okay, like analyzing things on a global level. I feel like my baby brain. But that's where I think just trying to name different ways to connect or to see different forms of usefulness, which I think the intrinsic, this is human life. People deserve to understand each other's struggles. And I think a part of that is like active and ongoing effort, which I appreciate being influenced. So, yeah.
And I feel like it's good because it can make, I feel like it's a legitimacy thing, like you were saying, that a lot of other leftists use. Like, they're like, oh, I could talk geopolitics. I know what I'm talking about. And it makes a lot of people trust them because they can keep a conversation going. And I think that's basic politicianing. It's part of the reason why I feel like as Americans, we're also told when protesting about foreign policy, like, we don't have all the covert intelligence they have. So how can we make an informed decision when they are the ones making the most informed decisions, really? So we have to let it be up to those people. And to me, I'm just thinking to tell people, like, dream together with people, think of alternative possibilities to fight global capitalism than relying on repressive states. I really think that that's a possibility, and that we need to think about it like that. Because if this is what you think of Free Asia looks like, or Free West Asia looks like, Iran, I don't know what to say to you.
Keep dreaming.
Yeah, keep dreaming. Keep dreaming.
I had a dream. We were on the mountaintop, and yeah, keep dreaming.
On the note of Sudan, we've also been just keeping up to date with some of the things that have been going on, especially like the absolute horrors coming out of Fasher. Definitely recommend folks do research and understand why we need to be fighting. I just think one thing that we don't talk about enough that I've been doing more research about is like the actual ethnic repression that's been going on from the Rapid Support Forces. And like, it's really like, they really hate niggas. Like, it's really that simple. Like, they're going after the Masalit, the Fur, the Zagawi, the Berti, and other non-Arab groups like the Tama, the most frequently mentioned. And like, just from El Fasher alone, there's 220,000 missing to dead. I just want to remind folks that we cannot stop talking about this. Like, this was a place, at least El Fasher, that was under siege since 2023. At least nationally in Sudan, there's been 14 million of people displaced. It's honestly absolutely horrendous. And it just goes to another point of like, we can't not be in communication with each other. And all that is dependent on us being more informed about what kind of technology we do have. Prince, you've been looking into some of the tech that ICE has been gathering and some of that stuff. And I don't know if you want to give a quick brief down of what people could be researching into.
Yeah, I've been kind of researching because I want to do like a YouTube video on my channel, but I've been kind of trying to learn more a bit lately. So obviously ICE has had an increased presence around various cities around the U.S. The Big Beautiful Bill last year allocated hundreds of millions of dollars towards Border Patrol, increasing the bed capacity for ICE, also allocating all sorts of money towards AI and other tech that can enable the different operations that ICE and CBP are doing. But some of the ones that I've been kind of honing in on lately, and we're going to try and include articles, but there's been a lot of reporting out of 404 Media and The Intercept and a bunch of other places. But some things to keep in mind. ICE is using a lot of artificial intelligence. So some of the reporting that I've seen recently is about ICE using AI bounty hunters. So ICE has contracted a variety of tech firms, but one of them is AI Solutions 87 to use AI software to automate their surveillance work traditionally done by human agents. And these AI agents can pull data from multiple sources that identify location, tracing movements, building relationships of whoever they're targeting. And this essentially helps accelerate the amount of data and information that the state can allocate in a shorter amount of time. And with this, especially, I think about like, what are the implications of more automated surveillance by the state? And one of those that I've been interested in terms of like doing my security of culture video last year is sort of this assumption that when the state is surveying, it's targeted surveillance. But what's interesting about more and more of these technologies and the fact that the government is resorting to more private companies and private data is that so many of these technologies are surveying large areas or large amounts of people. And so these previous notions of right to privacy, what's happening in the home being our right to privacy and that being a part of our constitutional rights, that's essentially melting away because of the Monroe and Don Roe doctrine and all this other bullshit. There's AI bounty hunters. There's actual bounty hunters that the government is also hiring through different private corporations. I'm pulling up this Intercept article right now, but it reads 10 companies have already made $1 million as ICE bounty hunters. And this is from December 2025. And these companies have contracts that stretch forward a number of years. And I'm trying to look up among the companies poised to cash in on the bounty hunting program, the largest potential haul of over $365 million goes to Capgemini Government Solutions, a McLean, Virginia-based federal consultancy that has a long track record of working for the Department of Defense and Homeland Security. And so there's just like a bunch of different companies that are doing different things. Like Government Support Services is a contractor that is staffing these facilities with janitors, groundskeepers, security guards. Provera is another company that signed a contract for bounty hunting, and they use intelligence gathering and investigative services. They're said to probably make about $3 million by the end of their contract. And these are companies that have worked with the government for a number of years, have had operations in other parts of the world, whether it be Iraq or other places. And so I just think the connection to foreign intervention, how that foreign intervention is obviously coming back and being imposed here, like I think that connection is very clear. ICE and DHS are doing more to buy more private information. I'm just reading from this article that I found from the ACLU. It notes that the Fourth Amendment generally requires the government to get a warrant before searching for your personal information, but these government agencies are circumventing this by simply buying private sensitive data from companies. And the ACLU reported that ICE, Customs and Border Patrol, and other agencies have access to huge amounts of data harvested from people's cell phones. I just think this is fascinating, and it makes me want to learn more because it's just all of these loopholes. It's like you can get it this way with the warrant, but this other way you could actually kind of get it because it actually only reveals this information. But the information that it does give you without a warrant allows you to actually identify people.
And it's like if you give it to a third party, then the expectation of privacy in there, like it said in the Fourth Amendment, and what people litigate about. And I know they used to do, like, if you had a game on your phone and you had, like, it would try to give you an ad, there was a split second where they would bid for what kind of ad would get sent to you. So then they would pull information from your phone, and that's the information that they would buy and sell. And that became less and less popular, and there's more methods, which people can go to 404 Media and go to their reporting to kind of get more of an up-to-date, consistent reporting on that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And some other beats, AI is being used to track phones in entire neighborhoods via geofencing, which is also a surveillance tactic that creates a virtual perimeter around a physical location and captures data. And I remember reading in a 404 Media article that talks about this one particular program that they're using to detect what your daytime activities are. So who do you spend time with? Where do you work? Your nighttime activities, where do you live? And if they can use these in targeted communities, you can get massive maps of people's daily routines, and that can be information that informs ICE raids, federal raids, etc. And so I find that to be interesting based on like the application, what it's used for. Also the fact that ICE is, I mean, they're selling people cell phones, I mean, and using it as blackmail to coerce people into, but there's a case out of, I can't remember if it was Texas or not, but there was a teenager who was driving to school with their parent. They were stopped by ICE. The parent and the child was detained. Eventually, the child was released after being brutalized, and they used Find My Location to track where their phone was, and they found that it was at a vending machine that you can bring your cell phone to in order to sell it, which obviously means that the ICE agents took the cell phone, sold it. They wanted the teenager to agree to the charges that they were presenting, or else the father would for sure be deported, even though now the father is definitely in Mexico, according to the article that I saw. And so I think I named that because the more information that the state has, it increases their capacity to blackmail people, to coerce them into signing documents, and I mean, inevitably legitimizing more of these systems of violence. And that's my little rundown.
Yeah. And in all of that, none of that makes us safer. All of this data intrusion, making the government better hackers. It's because the U.S. is so unsafe data-wise. Just small thing. Everyone's been hearing about Flock recently. I just all recommend people go to 404 Media and Ben Jordan, specifically their YouTube, where they have an amazing video about like the latest AI-powered like pan, tilt, zoom cameras that Ben found out were online and vulnerable and accessible, and you could see live video feeds, archived video up to 30 days, have administrative controls. And these are the cameras that, and they've been upgraded. A lot of Flock cameras are not just license plate readers now. A lot of them are moved to this pan, tilt, zoom, PTZ, pan, tilt, zoom cameras, in which they zoom in on people walking across things. They can film individuals on bike paths. They were caught watching children on playgrounds, observing people in parking lots. When he first logged in, there was a data list of the people that they were collected from the last 30 days, and everything that they were able to track connected to that individual. And the company always says everything's encrypted. But that doesn't matter if you get access to the endpoint. It's like Signal's encrypted, but once a cop has your phone, they can look right at those messages. That doesn't fucking matter. So yeah, just to remind us that we're all just a big, giant data sink, and the U.S. is really unsafe when it comes to your data, and we should all just take our privacy a lot more seriously.
What do you think are like the implications for, I don't want to say like the regular person just walking around living their normal life,
femicide
in the U.S.?
These open access and open source tools are notoriously known to enhance the capabilities of femicide. And like, this is something that Jordan talked about in their last interview with 404 Media, is that we can see the risks of this now. And does it take someone being stalked and brutalized for us to do something about it?
Yeah, how many cops got charges?
And cops have, there has been a cop already that has lost access because he tracks his fucking ex from state to state using Flock. So I'm like, yes, these are the sorts of things where it's like, we have to worry about.
And this is sort of a side note that I've been thinking of, and I sort of tried to make a video about this, but I basically have been thinking about like how like so many of like cops, whatever, federal agents, they have all these rules they're supposed to be following and yada yada. They already break all the rules anyway. But then I listen to something like that, I'm like, how is that person qualified to have this position? But I'm like, oh, the qualifications are that you're probably fucking racist and horrible and whatever. So I guess it just literally makes me think about like what is purported as law and order, and then what these people actually fucking do with it, and how so much of the populism or the reactionary politics that Trump and his base has tried to yield is like, well, our country's going off the rails. We need law and order. Like, we need to like move around where our spending. But I'm like, you're moving money into spending. You're spending money on things, and then look at the violations of power that are even more rampant.
Yeah, no, everyone's just mad they can't be the one doing the fraud.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I'm like, that I think is what kind of scares me. And I guess that's kind of related to like, what does this mean for the average person who's sort of paying attention or sort of not paying attention, where I'm like, so much more behavior is being criminalized, so much more data is being collected. And I don't know, like the state's capacity for inaccurate pattern recognition, if we're naming like AI as one of the main tools that they're using, and how many inaccuracies are in like the AI systems that are being developed. Like, I don't want people to censor themselves, of course, but I just worry like with the average person out there posting whatever, doing whatever. And of course, as the political violence gets more real for more and more people, I think that will shift behavior. But I really do wonder, like, what are the implications, not only for organizers, activists, leftists, revolutionaries, people that are trans or gender nonconforming, or I guess anything that isn't like white and Christian. I guess it's sort of related, but like how ICE agents are like masking up so they don't get doxxed. But I'm like,
And they started that in the Border Patrol.
yeah,
Specifically when they were closer to cartels, and it still comes from. And then when they launched it, they said it was because of cartels as well, and cartel retaliation.
I'm like, you're so proud to pew pew and do your job. Like, end up online. Why not?
Yeah, and it's just turning them into more and more of a deadly force for the state, which is just things that I think we should all be looking at. Which, thankfully, this is a plan that failed, but Trump wanted to merge the ATF and the DEA. If you think ICE is bad, imagine if the Alcohol and Tobacco and Firearms Administration links up with the Drug Enforcement Administration. You think you've seen a war on crime now? Or war on drugs? You think we've seen that? That would be their most... It doesn't matter if you're a citizen or not. They're coming after everyone. Thankfully, no one fucked with that. It's a scary thing that just reminds me of like early Nazi Germany, of all the different things that they tried to do and then weren't able to do, but were able to do 3 years in. When the war started, they were able to do. And I'm just looking at what we're doing in Greenland, and I'm like...
I'm reading a CNN quote, and it says, where there are drugs, there are usually guns. And when there are guns, there are usually drugs. One of the officials previously told CNN.
And ATF agents are notorious for shooting and arresting police officers on accident. And also, so are police. It's really funny. Everyone's got to find that nastiest angle, which I'm glad is a trend that went from ATF chuds to ICE protectors and resistance. But holy shit, there's a reason why people should be scared of the ATF and the DEA. And it's because the DEA, doesn't have to have an archive. They don't. It's so hard to know what they're doing. They're the only administration that we have completely lost the majority of their archive. And they said, yeah, it's okay. We don't need you to do it anyway. Because they're fighting cartels. They're doing the other things too. It's absolutely terrifying. But I guess to wrap all this up, I guess we can leave on just a couple of questions on how we're censoring ourselves too, which is like, we do all this media work. How do you handle your media intake?
I mean, I think lately it's trying to peel back how much short form I'm intaking. In certain spaces, it's useful, but when you're on your personal feeds and it's like, guy with huge ass, massacre, ICE agent blinding someone, a lady crying because she got a painting of her dead mom and her child after graduation, and my 30% of my feed is Hope Corps. I can handle it. It's like, I feel like I'm going through a DMT trip, but it's just in my phone. So I think one, being intentional about how I'm intaking short form, and then being more intentional about the other ways that I'm trying to intake media, whether it be like YouTube for something more casual, or specifically looking up certain topics or news things, or trying to dig more into contextualizing like a certain political situation. And that for me somewhat has been like trying to have sessions in a week when I'm like supposed to be doing work, where I just try to research a particular topic or country or something and sort of orient some of my thoughts. And that's been helpful, because I do think act of consuming a lot in the short form way, I think it's meant to overwhelm us. Like, I don't think it has a function. I mean, it can have a function where it's like, oh my God, that was so grounding. But it's like, out of the 20 reels that I'm watching, how many so I think that's like a part of it. Like, where do I consume intentionally? And then what are my processes of processing in a way that is grounding or cathartic or Yeah. And some of that has been lately. I've been rewatching That's So Raven in my free time, rewatching some of the Boondocks, and then also like trying to intake things seriously. But I do think for me, it's a struggle between wanting to be productive and smart and then also wanting to feel human in that process of intaking information. I don't know if I ever want to be the smartest person in the room, and I don't think that's my intention. But I think it's like, how can I stretch what I do know and do it in a way that's healthier?
I feel like we've come to some of the same conclusions. Because for me, it's been more, I want to be more intentional about what I'm on social media for, especially in thinking about like the things to bear witness to and why we bear witness, so why we choose to have ourselves bear witness to things. And also still trying to just like make time for when it's supposed to be just fun. But I really like the point you made, because it reminds me a lot of some of why I do that too, is because of the point of disinformation strategies these days. That's more in the mainstream, isn't just disinformation or misinformation. It's abusing and using how we get information through the short form content and overwhelming us. And that's like actual state policy.
Maybe this is a sort of a sad question. Have there been any things that you've seen pop up in media about politics and stuff that you're like, what the fuck? So I think about like you talking about campism and how that's like, I guess I'm also thinking about like all of the fake AI videos of ICE raids or like either pro-ICE or anti-ICE. And then I also think of, I guess I'm going into like the DHS and all their stuff. But one thing I've been really angered about was like all the videos of like people yelling at ICE agents and being like, you can't come in here. And I'm like, it's AI. And I get that it's there for an emotional response, like, yeah, fuck ICE, fuck the pigs, whatever. But I'm like, it's AI, it's not even real. And then you could be watching a Know Your Rights reel, but you're watching an AI reel about Superman saving the lady at the bodega.
Yeah, I feel like it's a signal that we're a part of a transition where people are trying to legitimize. Like, it's a push to legitimize more AI usage.
AI-induced propaganda?
Yeah. And then trying to legitimize that more and more to then eventually spread more disinformation and misinformation with it, which is really, really scary to me.
I'm just scared about it. I'm like, how many fake videos are people going to see before they see something real? And then if they see less real things, then how many people are actually going to act on that real thing and then try to seek more information?
We don't have a government that's interested in doing anything about that. Not at all, because there are simple ways for credibility for videos that we could be doing. Like, there are ways to inject into the metadata that something is not AI. And if it doesn't have that, you can't trust it. And like, we're just not making that pathways and that technology the most accessible and putting it into every single thing that makes and creates a photo or is a part of photo manipulation. None of that is like what we're doing. And I just think that it's really scary. But what was the actual question? I had the things that we go,
like things that are pissing you off or you find weird.
So yeah, what's really pissing me off is the lack of coverage about how normalized we're used to hearing America first. It's really pissing me off that it's in all of our State Department rhetoric. It's in all of our Health Department rhetoric, and nobody's talking about how that was literally the Nazi solidarity party inside the United States.
Wasn't there something also with like the press secretary, like on her podium? There was like a
when one goes
of one for all of us and for one of us or something, and people were speculating that as well.
No, that is a straight up Nazi phrase from when a SS officer got killed in a village in Poland, and then they came, not in Poland, but they got killed in a village by like a leftist, and niggers got their lick back, and then the government came in hard. I might be conflating that also with the story of like this leftist in Germany who got shot by an SS officer because they were like screaming Heil Hitler and some fascist shit, and they ended up screaming like Red Guard to show that they were a communist and like fuck you, and then he was like, I'll shoot you, and then they were like, well, I'll shoot you then, and then shot her right in the fucking face. And what does that remind you of, Renee? It's shit like that. I'm like, some of the allegories towards other fascist movements, and also that like we don't need to see them as just one fascist movement as well. So yeah, I think it's some of the lack of reporting that I'm seeing, and I'm like, we can call out a dog whistle and say, hey, this person has 14 words and 88 letters in the DHS post when they literally posted a Nazi photo. I don't care about how many words or dog whistles are in. They are post-Nazi things.
Like it's not dog whistles. Or I guess I think about, like, I was watching the Fire These Times video, or maybe it was Politically Depressed, and that makes me think about, like, how it's not manufactured consent anymore. It's just, they don't need to manufacture their own consent. It's just like, this is what's happening. Like, what the fuck do you mean? Of course we're gonna racially profile people. The Supreme Court just said it's okay. Or even, but you know, whether or not, you like all of that stuff where it's like,
I'm like, are people going to be more willing to call him Hitler-esque once we take Greenland and we start doing global expansion more? I'm like, what will it take? And I guess it's one of those, like, we don't do wait for it to take it that way.
That's a question I don't even want to think about.
Yeah, I guess the last thing I want to talk about is, like, where are we feeling? I guess I have something I wanted to say on this conversation of, like, when is it time to leave? And to me, I just think about the framing of, are you escaping? Are you trying to escape? Are you trying to flee? And just constantly thinking about, like, there is, especially for Black people, there is no escape. And how to flee, even in and of itself, will only give you, like, momentary respite in itself. Will give you a shitload of more considerations to think about and to have to worry about while still going through and having to deal with the impacts of American fascism as it crawls across the world and deepens its roots. And I guess one framing I want to offer folks is to continue, or at least urge yourself to think about it as more of a retreat. That to be in a better position to fight against what's going on around us, we have to be able to calmly and collectively allocate and organize and mobilize our resources. And we need to be able to create those safe spaces, whether it's inside or outside the U.S. Revolution is everywhere. And this is just one front line in the fight against fascism. We need to make rear bases, or bases where we're able to be safe and have community no matter where we're at. Understanding what puts you and your community in the most advantageous position, I think, is a really good framing for folks when thinking about how or when do I need to leave the United States.
Yeah, I mean, that reminds me, I watched an interview with Mark Bray, the author of the Anti-Fascist Handbook, and he kind of talked about how, like, with his time not being here, to your point, it's like, what can I do here that is useful for people in the U.S. fighting, or like recognizing these systems. Yeah, and I guess when I think of, like, when is it time to leave, I think about distinctions of survival, how some forms of survival are solely self-interested, some are because of we want to avoid causing the people we love misery if something bad were to happen to us or them. And then I also just think about, like, leaving as well because you want a more peaceful life. Like, there are all these different reasons, or like a better life. If I'm thinking of, like, last year talking to someone whose family, I can't remember where their family's from in Central America, but they said they asked their parents who'd, like, survived, like, this horrific regime, and their parents were just like, you should probably leave when men in unmarked cars, like, just start kidnapping people. And I'm kind of like, so in some ways, I'm like, we've already crossed the line. It's like touching the fire on the stove, and if you know that your enemy is going to get more vicious, more violent, more sadistic, is when anyone decides to leave arbitrary? Is it a personal point of suffering, a collective point of suffering? Because I do think there's the leaving to preserve some form of innocence, and then there's the leaving to do whatever else isn't that, or the variety of things that isn't that. And I think there's so many different choices there, because, like, some people stay and then that ends up fucking you up even more than this other timeline that you could have happened, or vice versa for leaving. There's an importance to name the different ways that the state is trying to attack us. So if one particular formation or antagonism gets closer, you have the ability to detect some of those things. Not everyone can, but I'm thinking about, like, the RICO stuff, or financial stuff, if you're like someone who's like aligned with certain formations of mutual aid or FBI surveillance or door knocks, or there's so many different ways I think the state is showing and naming that it intends to or already is trying to scare people or disappear them or continue to disappear them. And so
I don't know. I already think we're past the point of no return. So it's just like, what we gonna do while it's all going down?
if something happened to anyone in my family, is that a line? If I can't do the kind of work I want to do without immediate criminalization, is that a line? Is the line like a portion of my city has been occupied by the state for ill purposes?
I don't know. There's so many things where I'm like, it's already going down in various capacities. So
Does it just have to get worse?
And I just think people need to be able to be ready to give themselves grace, because whether people stay or leave, regrets are going to be made, regrets are going to be had, and there is, especially in a retreat, a lot of things that can happen that you can blame yourself for. One example that a homie told me, especially those who are thinking of leaving the U.S., even to just gain and be in a better position to come back and fight or build the networks to fight more effectively, because looking at some of the revolutionary milieu, not looking too hot, or it's looking like we're having questions about how we're going to sustain this. And some of that's going to be more information and more formations. I think about the Allies in World War II. They retreated out of all of Europe when Germany did its blitzkrieg across Europe at the beginning. They knew they could not hold those towns and still formulate and organize a response to fight back the fascists. And it took years for states to do that, to fight against a fascist country like that, like Germany. That's a framing that we can part ourselves in this global revolution, in this global war against the people, is that these fronts are all very connected. And the more labor we do to keep that communication network open and free, the freer we will be as a people.
And on that note, I've been reading more Diane de Prima lately, and I'll read this poem in relation to what we're talking about. Revolutionary Letter number 18. Let's talk about splitting. Splitting is an art frequently called upon revolution. Retreat, says I Ching, must not be confused with flight, and furthermore, frequently, it furthers one to have somewhere to go, i.e., know in advance the person/place you can go to, means to get there, keep money, cash, and house for traveling, an extra set of ID. Robert Williams was warned by his own TV set when the man was coming for him. He had his loot at home, his wife and kids, all across the country with him, into Canada and onto Cuba. It's a good idea to have good, working transportation, wheels. One friend has 2 weeks stashed in his VW bus, food, water, matches, clothing, blankets, gas. He can go at least that long before he hits a town, can leave at any time. Something to think about.
Hey listeners, this is The Dugout, and we're all about sharing Black radical history and ideas to spark learning and action. If you've gained something from these conversations, you might want to consider supporting us on the Patreon. Your support helps us cover production costs, bringing on amazing guests, and creates resources for deeper education. Plus, you'll get early access to the interviews and exclusive reading episodes. Head to patreon.com/thedugoutpod and join. Keep this work going.